Did you ever have sex with the girl? With Janine? Oh.
A horrifying find was made by cops in a shallow grave in White House, Ohio, on November 19, 1983. Inside, they found the body of Janine Brown, 19, who was almost completely naked.
She was almost decapitated. It was almost overkill.
Investigators learned more about the case and found lies. They became suspicious of 4 people.
We arrested him on drug charges. Before that, I thought that he would provide information.
Still, the investigation had a hard time moving forward. It took 30 years, a lot of turns, and one important hint to finally solve the case. But before we get into the full story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life crime stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And let me know in the comment, which country are you watching from? I want to know how far this case is reaching around the world. Let's get into it.
Detectives have a weapon that they didn't have in '83, and that's DNA.
The quiet Ohio town of White House got some scary news on November 18th, 1983. A woman who went for a run early in the morning saw blood in the fields not far from where Janine and Pam went to live.
He was walking by and saw a big pool of blood. She thought somebody had slaughtered a deer in that area.
It was like on the edge of a field, sort of off towards the woods.
The woman was about to leave because she thought she saw a wild animal being killed, but then she saw something else. The woman started to walk along the muddy path marked by drag lines that led from where the trousers were lying to the forest. She was scared and sure that something terrible had happened here. A foot could be seen from under all the mud when she got to a place where a lot of leaves and mud had been dumped. This made her blood run cold.
She hadn't realized that there was a person in that sock and that she had stumbled upon the makeshift grave.
As soon as she got home, she called 911 and told them what she had seen. After only a short time, the police arrived and began their probe. When the cops got to the crime scene, what they saw shocked and silenced them. They chose to give the case to the county deputies. When the deputies got there, they were led by Detective Daryl Symington, who has been training for a long time.
Detective Symington, I knew from a few cases. He was a go-getter. He was a careful detective. And I think at the time, he was probably the perfect detective for the case from their department.
Just a few feet of dirt made up the grave, and dead leaves were piled around and on top of the body. The body was identified as that of a woman after all the dirt was washed off of it. The forensic team started taking pictures of the victim while the detective carefully looked at all of her bruises.
She had some markings on it that could have been more, I mean, maybe from the struggle or, even from maybe dragging her to the area of her throat was cut. I thought it was definitely maybe like a Bowie knife or something that was pretty big. She was almost decapitated. It was almost overkill.
Along the way of the investigation, the police found more clothes belonging to the victim as well as a pack of Merit cigarettes.
She was face down in the creek. Her head was pointed south here. She had suffered a knife wound to the throat.
While investigating, they chose to bring in a kit because the body was found naked in the makeshift grave. It was proven through tests that the victim had been. The forensic team started gathering evidence from the crime scene. They found hair from the victim, blood, and signs of male bodily fluid on the body. But while they were doing that, the agents found out another horrible secret. When they looked at the body, they saw that Janine had been hurt before she died. As the investigation went on, the detectives began to have rough thoughts about what might have happened to the woman.
Because of the condition of the body and the number of bruises and the violence that was there, it appeared that the person probably knew the victim and that they had a motive to have committed the act. We also thought that it would be somebody local because if it was a person traveling through town who didn't live there, who didn't know her, they probably just left her body by the side of the road. There would be no reason to actually try to cover the body. We thought that it was a good chance we could find that person.
People in the village were scared as they waited to hear what had happened and who had killed the woman. Word got around that a horrible body had been found. The officers were still not sure who the victim was, which was bad news. Using a method called elimination, they began to look for information about the suspect. They started going through the most recent missing persons reports to see if there was one that fit the victim's description. Soon, they found one that did. Soon, the police found a report written by a woman named Pam Rader. After looking over Pam's report, police found out that the victim was Janine Brown, who was 19 years old. After that, Janae's family was told that her body had been found.
I remember sitting at home. My mom called to tell me and my brother that they had found her. I was 16. You don't want to believe it. My uncle had went to identify the body. He never spoke of what he's seen.
An in-depth investigation was launched to bring Jane in justice and catch the person who hurt her. In order to find the person responsible as soon as possible, the police made a list of everyone who knew Janin or had talked to her on the night she went missing. The first person to be called into the interview room was Pam Rader. Pam was heartbroken when she heard that her best friend had been killed. She told the police that she wanted them to catch the criminal and that she would do anything to help them do that. When the police asked Pam about what happened before Janaean went missing and was later found dead, she told them everything they needed to know about Janine. Janine Brown lived in White House, Ohio, a small farming town, when she was 19 years old. In the 1980s, White House was like a town. Everyone knew each other and helped each other out, but it wasn't ready for what was about to happen. Janaean and Pam had been best friends since they were kids on the night of November 17th, 1983.
She was caring, loving, funny, the most giving person ever. Janine and I were called Laverne and Shirley. Me being Laverne because I was a mouthy one. Janine being Shirley because she was the quiet one.
After she graduated, they bought a house and moved in with Pam's brother, Larry Rader. To help the old and other people who need help, Janaean became a nurse. She often talked about how much she loved her job and helped other people. It wasn't hard for her to get to the nursing home because it was close to her house. Janaean and Pam liked doing normal teen things like going to the pub at night because they were teenagers.
The kids, after they graduated, had just hung out there, watching ball games, drink a little beer, or they might smoke a little pot or something like that, but that was about the biggest thing back then.
The girls often went to Copper Lantern, the only pub in the small town. But on November 17th, 1983, when the two girls went to the pub like it was any other Thursday night, they were scared for things that would happen that would change their lives forever. Pam's brother Larry had also gone to the pub with the girls. When the girls walked in, they met their friends who were already there. The girls met Harold Big Dog Estep, who goes by the stage name Crazy Horse, and Janine's boyfriend, Bill Heisinger. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about and accepted the couple's relationship, which had been going on for almost a month.
Janine was dating Harold. Harold showed up. Harold was a nice guy. He was good looking, too.
He's 26 years old, and he had just come back from his army duties. A lot of the girls in the community really liked him. And Janine was only 19 with this older man that everybody liked.
They hadn't been dating long at all. It wasn't even a month, but he was good to her. She was happy with him.
Andy Gustafson was also there. He knew everyone in the White House. The rich kid in the town, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He made it clear to everyone how full of cash he was. Besides that, he used to leave big tips for the waiters and even buy other people beers at the bar. At 12:30, Andy said something about Janine's body while admiring her for having a cute butt. This changed the mood from fun to tense.
Andy had mentioned Janine had a cute butt. You're talking about another girl having a cute butt. You don't do that. But that's the type of a man he was.
Harold was furious as soon as he heard the remarks. Harold was notorious in the village for getting very angry very quickly. When he got angry, he often chose to fight. As soon as he heard what Andy said, he got angry and was ready to fight Andy.
Harold was a good guy. But then, boy, you would piss him off and he would snap. Then within a snap of the fingers, he's back to being nice again. You just don't know. Harold laughed. Yeah, she does. And she's mine, so ha ha.
Harold was the badass. He was sort of the tough guy. He was a guy that if I would say stop him, then I'd be a little extra careful with.
But the situation didn't turn into a fight because everyone at the bar, including Janine, told them to ignore Andy's words because he was known for saying rude things about girls. When the time reached 2 a.m., the bar closed and everyone was asked to leave. Harold said goodbye, and Janine told him they'd meet up for a date the next day. She then went out with Pam, but right in front of the bar, she stopped and turned around to tell Harold something. That's when she saw something that made her blood boil.
Janine said goodbye to Harold, gave him his kiss goodbye, and then we were walking to the car, and she turned around to say something to Harold. And that's when she saw him kissing the barmaid, Loretta. Janine said, "Big dog." That was his nickname. "What are you doing?" And he startled, looked up, and then she said, "I want to go home now." She was hurt. She was hurt bad.
She was so angry that she stormed out of the bar without even waiting for Harold to explain himself. That's when Pam and Janaean got into their friend's car and asked to be driven home. But Janaean looked hopeless when the two girls came in and took off their jackets. She told Pam that she didn't want to wait until morning to talk to Harold and that she wanted to do it right away.
It was going to be okay. We'll wake up tomorrow. We'll talk about it. But she wouldn't let it go. She grabbed my high school cheerleading jacket. Out the back door she went. That's the last I saw her. I will never forgive myself for not going with her.
When Pam woke up the next morning, Janaean wasn't in her room. She thought Janaean might have gone to Harold's house to spend the night. It got more and more strange that Janaean wasn't at work when it was time for her to go. Janaean would never act like this, so Pam knew something was wrong.
And I figured, okay, she's up with Harold. She ended up staying up there. They talked. She probably fell asleep. But it started getting closer to time for her to go to work. I'm like, okay, something's not right. Jeannie never missed work. Never.
Because of this, Pam called Harold to find out if Janaean had overslept and wasn't going to work. When Harold answered the phone, though, his answer made Pam feel cold.
You know, wait a minute, she's not there. No, I hadn't seen her since last night. And that's when I started becoming sick. That's when I started doing a major panic.
With a lot of stress and worry, Pam called Janaean's brother to find out if she had gone home last night instead. Pam could not stand it any longer and chose to call the cops. She put in a report about Janaean being lost, giving them all the information they needed. The cops told her it was still too early to start an investigation, though. Pam became angry and began walking around every place Janaean could be, desperately looking for her best friend. The first person the police thought was guilty was Janaean's boyfriend, Harold Estep, because Pam said that Janaean left the house to face Harold when she saw him kissing the barmaid.
If she had gone down there and confronted him, they could have had a fight in regards to that. Clearly, there was a potential motive for Mr. Estep to have committed the act.
The officers began by questioning Harold because they thought he might know something about what happened. He might have killed her out of anger or because he wanted to get rid of her for the barmaid. When they asked him, Harold told them what had happened that terrible night.
The night in question, it was a Thursday night, and everybody was just having a good time. Andy made that comment. If I can avoid the confrontation, I will, but I wasn't shy on scrapping neither. But I left it alone. We ended up closing it down. Everybody was leaving, and the barmaid had come out and gave me a kiss. And I didn't understand it because I didn't know the girl. And then I turned around, and Janine gave me a strange look. And I just stuck my hands up in the air and said, "Oh," and left it at that.
Harold told the police that he didn't meet up with Janaean after leaving the bar. Instead, he went to his sister's house, which is only 2 blocks from Copper Lantern.
Well, that's kind of odd. But I was getting ready to go to my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. I wasn't thinking she was hurt. I told Pam, well, if you find out something, call me or let me know. And that was the end of that. When I found out what happened, it just devastated me. She just had a spark to her in life, you know. And I knew deep down inside I didn't do nothing wrong. The only thing I did wrong was when that girl gave me a hug and a kiss.
Harold was a strong suspect, even though he kept saying he had nothing to do with the killings. So to make sure his story was true, the police chose to talk to his sister, who was with him the night of the murder.
I put my sister through hell for about 6-7 hours. It was horrible. At that point, I knew that they was checking on me and thinking maybe I'm lying.
The testimony of his sister would add another complicated layer to the probe. Harold's sister said that he had come to stay with her that night and that no one else had been there, which proved his alibi. Not having any proof against Harold, he was free, so the police had to let him go. Loretta, the barmaid, was the next person the police questioned. This is what she told the police about what happened that night.
She said he was being flirtatious with her, but there was nothing going on between the two of them.
It was just too much drinking, and she was a little flirtatious with some other people too.
That Janine never came to the bar after the bar closed, and she then got a ride home.
The police believed Loretta's story because they didn't think she could have done the crime by herself. They thought that since Janaean had been beaten up before she died, one of the people who did it had to be a man. Loretta was still on the watch of the police, though. The cut wounds on Janaean's neck were caused by someone who knew how to use knives, according to the forensic report. The detectives looked at all the people who were in the Copper Lantern that night, based on this tip. Bill Heisinger, who was also known as Crazy Horse in the town, caught their attention. Bill was a survivalist, so he always had a knife with him. He knew a lot about tools and how to use them. When the police asked Bill about it, he said that he had been to the Copper Lantern that night, but had left for home when it closed. Bill lived alone, so no one could check his alibi. This meant that police were left with a suspect that they could look into further. Bill was added to the list of suspects by the police, but they weren't ready for the next shocking turn of events that was about to happen. The officers were also interested in Larry Rader, who is Pam's brother. The police found out a shocking truth about the man living with Janine and his sister when they did a quick check on them.
Madly in love with Janine.
Larry dated Janine before I did.
Now, Larry Rader had some problems with alcohol, but he was not a violent person or anything like that. His problem was drinking and driving. It still doesn't mean he should be cleared as a suspect. We went out there and talked to him. He was sobbing. But he had such a bad drug and alcohol problem. You couldn't really cipher through if he felt guilty about it that night or whatever it is.
Pam kept saying that her brother Larry had no reason to kill Janaean, even after she was told that Larry was a suspect. But police thought Larry might have killed this person because he was angry that Janaean was dating Harold.
Before we even went to the Copper Lantern, he went to the bar before Janine got off work. He did love her.
It raises a red flag. Clearly, he had very strong feelings for her, but you just can't do it by appearances. You have to have the actual proof he committed the murder.
I kept telling the detectives he didn't do it, because he was out cold when we got home. The detectives asked me, how do you know we didn't leave? Our house was very small. There's no way he could have got out. He would have had to go out the bedroom door, and I would have heard him because my bedroom was right next to it.
Since Pam confirmed Larry's story, the police had no choice but to let him go too. Also, their idea that he killed Janaean because he was jealous didn't work. When the detectives thought they had hit a dead end, something awful happened that changed the course of their investigation. One of the witnesses, Chester, spoke up about what he had seen the night Janaean went missing.
Sir was a resident of the nursing home that Janine worked at, and he actually was a nocturnal person. He was out during that evening that he saw her walking by.
He did have a conversation with her.
And he informed the police and told them that he had seen the van pull up there, and she had actually gone up to the passenger side and talked to somebody in the van.
He couldn't really see how many people were in it, but he said that Janine got into the van. Chester said that there was no hesitation, there was no struggle, anything like that.
He said it was a tan-colored van. It has small windows on it. It had a ladder on the back.
Pam told the police that the person who picked up Janaean couldn't have been taking her home because the place where Chester and Janaean had met was only a few minutes from their house. So the person who picked her up might have offered to take her to Harold's place, but they never did. The officers began to cross-check to see if anyone in the pub that night knew Janaean or had talked to her and owned a truck. One name stood out from the list of possible suspects: Andy Gustafson.
He was a privileged child. His father was president of a big company here in town. He had all the toys, the motorcycles, the cars, and it was a very distinctive van. It was a tan-colored van.
He didn't want to make any statements.
We want to tie him to a statement so he can't backtrack on it.
He was just cocky to a point where he thought he couldn't be touched. He hired one of the better attorneys in the area. And
The officers asked him what he did at the Copper Lantern. He said he drank there and then went home right away around 3 a.m. Investigators had more questions after his wife confirmed his alibi. This was especially true since Chester had told them he saw Janine get into a van around 4 a.m. When the detectives called Andy back in to be questioned, he got a lawyer and refused to help them. The cops knew they had to find a different way. They chose to start with Andy's van because they thought it might hold information about his role in the murder. They got a search warrant for it. The forensics team found something shocking just as the detectives were giving up because they thought the van held no hints. The used cigarettes were the same type that Janine used to smoke. They were Merit cigarettes.
Back then, we could do blood tests, but you couldn't really do saliva tests to make sure that one cigarette butt came from Janine Brown. There were no real tests to know until they developed the DNA technology.
However, the police still couldn't reach Andy to ask him about the new information. The police were at a dead end again because they had no more evidence to look into, and the technology they had at the time couldn't tell if Janine had smoked the cigarettes. No one was found to be responsible, and all the suspects were freed because there wasn't enough solid evidence. In the end, the case went cold. For many years, Pam, Janine Brown's best friend, never gave up on getting her justice. One thing that drove her was her never-ending efforts to bring attention to the issue and fight for justice. After 30 years, the case was looked into again in June 2013. Detectives Jay Gast and Tom Ross from the Cold Case Department were in charge of it.
You check the evidence, you locate the reports, and in this case, there was a ton of reports.
They essentially redid from the bottom up the entire case.
We had to go right from scratch, from day one again. I don't care. I'll go over it as many times as I have to. My story is never going to change.
Because of progress in science, the agents had the upper hand in the case at this point. DNA genealogy was a very useful tool that they could use to help with their research. The police went back to the 4 main suspects who had neither been caught nor cleared of any wrongdoing. They knew that a single swab of DNA would help them figure out which of the 4 was guilty. Bill Crazy Horse Heisinger was the first person the agents chose to question. Many people knew him badly in the 1970s, and that hadn't changed much since then. When the officers came up to him, he wasn't surprised when they brought up Janine. He started answering their questions right away.
A little chilly to be sitting here with no shirt on.
Yeah.
Nah, not for you, huh?
All right.
Everybody that we're talking to now, we're just getting a sample of their DNA. Would you give us one?
Yeah.
Bill was helpful to the police, but when they asked him to describe what happened that night, he said something that made no sense to them.
Remember who the victim, Janine?
She told me what she saw, and I told her, run. Don't go back to your house. Run.
What did she say she saw?
She saw them sacrificing babies. They're all in black magic.
The detectives wanted to make sure this information was correct, but his statement wasn't clear enough, so it left them with more problems than answers. But the police now had Bill's DNA. They chose to wait for the results before accepting any other theory because they thought he might have made up the story because he knew he was guilty and felt threatened. Lisa Rader's brother Larry was the next person to be questioned. Larry had dated Janine in the past and still had strong feelings for her. When the officers went to talk to Larry, though, they ran into another problem. When the police did a background check, they also learned that Larry had passed out drunk on Janine's grave. They asked for a DNA sample to be taken from Larry's body. His family was shocked by the request, but they chose to help with the investigation because they were sure Larry wasn't guilty. So, 27 years after Janine Brown was killed, the police got a sample of Larry's DNA and sent it to a lab to be studied further. The next person the police looked at was Harold Estep, who was Janine's boyfriend at the time.
You just walked home from the bar at that point. Were you by yourself when you walked home?
Myself.
From that point on, did you ever see Janine again?
Never again.
The last suspect the police questioned was Andy Gustafson, who was known as the rich kid in the town.
He has children, he has grandchildren, he's still married. His story is very consistent with his story from '83, which is he had nothing to do with it.
The police asked Andy to give them a DNA sample, but he did something strange that made the police even more suspicious. After hiring a lawyer, Andy told the police that he was not at all willing to give them a sample of his DNA. Right away, this made Andy look like a more likely suspect. The other results from the lab came back before the officers could look any further. All three suspects' DNA did not match the DNA found on Janine's body, so they were finally taken off the list of people who might have done it. After 30 years,
It's like a whirlwind, Being a suspect and accused of something that you know deep down inside you did not do, that can put a lot of stress on you, and, people look at you a whole different way. And that really bothered me for a long time. Janine, this was the last place I seen her alive. I was standing over here, and this girl come out of the bar and put her arms around me and gave me a kiss, and I didn't know why. I didn't even know her. I feel guilty a lot of times because this girl comes out of the bar, and a matter of 30 to 40 seconds changed lots of people's lives.
when Andy refused to give a DNA sample, the agents thought they had reached a dead end. They had new hope, though, when they found a clue in Andy's file, the Merit cigarette that had been found in his van. When the police sent it to a lab to be tested, the data gave them a very important clue. The DNA on the cigarettes was the same as Janine Brown's.
There was a DNA profile on that cigarette consistent with Janine Brown, and now we've got her DNA profile in the van. Immediately, police know Andrew Gustafson lied. He had consistently said that she was not in his van, and now we've got her DNA profile in the van.
It all keeps coming back to Gustafson. Gustafson. The fog gathers, you clear the fog, there's still Gustafson.
In order to find out if Andy would admit that Janine had been in his car on the night she was killed, he was questioned again.
You're a big man, so I understand that these are not real comfortable, so we're going to try to accommodate you. Appreciate it.
He seemed real comfortable with you.
Well, we took some time talking to get into it.
Do you remember Janine?
I met her, but I didn't know her by name. I was at the same bar she was at, apparently.
I didn't really expect him to confess after, all 30 some odd years.
As God is your witness, she was not in a van.
But the denials that he made and his refusal to acknowledge that Janine was even in his van certainly helped with what the forensic sciences.
He's in a police building. He's being video recorded. And Andy Gustafson sticks to his same story, that he wasn't with her. He would have no reason to have any DNA present on her.
Did you ever have sex with the girl? With Janine? No. No reason that your DNA was going to be on her or in her?
He really denied all the aspects of what the science told us.
You never had consensual sex. I'm not saying you forced yourself on her. I'm not saying, no.
If he just would have changed his story and said, yes, we had consensual sex, she got in my van, she was mad at her boyfriend, these were all very plausible explanations. But the way that Detective Gast locked him in to that story was very advantageous for a prosecutor.
I guess I might as well get a hold of the attorney and see what to do now.
It's been 30 years, and you think you're going to get away with it, and the day would never come that you'd be held accountable for it. So
you don't want to answer any more questions or talk anymore?
I'll just talk to the attorney.
Okay. Fair enough.
Just as the cops were giving up, they made a big discovery that helped them finally solve the Janine Brown case. A well-known detective from the sheriff's county named Detective Kathy Stooksbury called the officers who were investigating and said she could help them.
Detective Stooksbury, she was not an investigator on the Janine Brown case. However, she knew that they were doing DNA testing on the swab that we had and that Andy Gustafson was a suspect 6 years prior. There was a complaint made against Andrew Gustafson that he had assaulted another woman. Stooksbury had talked to him and said that we could clear this all up against him if he would provide a DNA sample. He agreed to then have Kathy Stooksbury swab his mouth and get a DNA sample for him. The DNA swab that Kathy Stooksbury took from Andy Gustafson stayed in her desk. She documented that when she took it and that she sealed the box that had not been opened. She indicated that she locked the desk drawer every time she left the office so that it would be secure in her desk.
Agent Kathy took a DNA sample from him and sent it to a lab to be tested. When the test results came back, the police knew for sure who killed Janian Brown: Andy Gustafson. Andy was caught right away because his DNA matched. In May 2013, the police thought they knew what happened on the night of the murder, even though Andy didn't say anything. Andy's unsuccessful attempt to talk to Janin made him want her even more. Andy did give Janin a ride when he saw her walking down the street around 4 a.m., just like Chester had seen. They might have smoked together if Andy hadn't started to bother Janian in a way she didn't like. He must have pulled Janian into the woods and hit her with his belt after she fought back hard against his advances. He then used her, but because he was afraid of being caught, he took the knife and almost cut off her head by slitting her throat. Then he must have gone back home and tricked his wife into thinking he got home around 3 a.m. so she would believe his story. Andy chose to take the plea deal instead of going to trial because his lawyers knew they couldn't beat the DNA proof. On December 28, 2014, they agreed that Andy Gustafson did kill someone and someone in the first degree, which are both felonies. He got 10 years in prison for killing someone without meaning to, and 5 years for
This savagely murdered my best friend. You damn near cut her head off. You get 10 years for involuntary manslaughter and 5 years.
The deal was the best way to go for a surefire conviction. The length of the sentence was not as important to us as the admission.
I wished I would have stopped Janine right then and explained things, but I didn't. If I could change things, boy, would I. Janine was a good person that did not deserve what happened to her.
People who knew Janaean and her family finally found out what had happened to the wild and free girl on the night of November 17th, 1983. Lisa's brother Larry had a deep love for Janian and was so heartbroken when she died that he turned to drinking. He would go to her grave every day and pray that she would get justice. It's too bad that the criminal wasn't there to party when he was caught after all these years. In her speech, Pam talked about how much she missed her best friend. Her brother, Janian's brother, and her family said that Andy's confession to killing her seemed to take a weight off their shoulders. It was finally over. All those long nights spent wondering who could have hurt her had been for nothing. Now, 30 years later, thanks to progress in DNA, Janian's family and friends always visited her grave and prayed for her soul. It was a terrible tragedy that someone killed a beautiful, sure of herself woman who was at the peak of her powers just to satisfy their lust. People she knew prayed for her to be at peace, now that Andy was in jail. Thank you for watching this unbelievable true crime case. It proves that no matter how much time passes, justice can still find its way. Stories like these remind us that truth may be delayed, but it is never truly lost. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more true crime stories. Stay safe, take care of yourself and your loved ones, and I'll see you in the next video.